so many businesses in Melbourne lost so much money over the weekend. The Valentine's Day weekend, people just had to throw out product. There's some estimates that as much as $100 million was lost in revenue just in Melbourne alone over the weekend. Are they the kind of figures that you're talking about, the amount of money that was lost over this past weekend, Paul?
Good morning, Peter. And it's probably actually more than that when you think about the impact with, races resuming at Flemington with crowds. We had the Australian Open, of course, with crowds, Chinese New Year, and add to that Valentine's Day as well. We've had estimates north of 500 million, in fact, probably nudging that $1 billion mark. And when you put it in perspective, Grand Final Day, we believe cost the economy at about $1 billion. Those numbers start to tie in. So, this was a particularly difficult weekend for Victoria, not just metropolitan Victoria, but across the board.
Yeah, and that's a good point to make too. It's not just Melbourne, but it's in regional areas that don't even have a single case. So was it the right call?
Look, we have to rely on the health advice here, and certainly the snap lockdown was because of that health advice. So, the numbers were encouragingly low over the weekend, so that's a good thing. It's behind us now, Pete. We can't take that weekend back. So what we now need is clarity out of the state government that we can get going again by Thursday. Certainly today's announcements around the vaccine are positive as well. So, if the numbers stay low today, we'd expect to be given the green light to get going again on Thursday.
Okay, well, that was going to be my next question. What your thought process at the moment, Paul, talking to your members, talking to members of your community, is there any fear or anxiety based around the fact that this lockdown may well be extended?
Yeah, sure is. I mean, from Friday afternoon when it was first announced, there was a bit of anxiousness. Then it went to anger. And I think people wake up this morning knowing they can't get that weekend back, now anxious again around when they can restart. So, it's got to be Thursday, but we also need commitments that this hotel quarantine failures that continue won't continue again. Victorian businesses can't keep paying the cost of, bungled hotel quarantine.
Yeah. So do you have faith in the system, Paul? I'm guessing not.
It's difficult to have faith when we're back in this position, Peter. We were flying, a couple of weeks ago. We had nearly 30 days of zero cases in a row, and now we're back in lockdown. Not just a lockdown for a particular area, it's a lockdown across the state. So we all want to have faith in the system. We all need faith in the system, and ultimately, we need that proof again.
And you're not getting it at the moment?
Not yet. No, and we know this year's going to be probably yo-yoing in and out of some type of restriction. So, we're going to need hotel quarantine operating for probably the better part of 12 months as the vaccine rolls out. We also need the vaccine rollout now as well, and hopefully as the vaccine rolls out, less reliance on hotel quarantine, but it's still going to be there for a period of time. So we need it operating successfully.
Could this have been helped, Paul, if the vaccine rollout had happened earlier?
Possibly. It's a question of how earlier. We'll need the majority of the population vaccine before we got any relief from it. So, you're talking probably 4 million people that would need the vaccine to give some reliance on it. And those doses just aren't available yet. So, but, Godspeed to the vaccine. Hope it gets here in time. And let's hope we get some good news on the AstraZeneca one, because as we know, that's going to be produced just down the road in Broadmeadows.
Paul, can you be specific at the moment on what kind of extra help business is going to need going forward, and in particular beyond March when JobKeeper ends? The Treasurer just said then that there's not going to be any specific help beyond March. But, do you believe that this new lockdown might change things and help you out, or what sort of help might you ask from the state government?
Yeah, so there's probably two parts to that, Peter. The first is to cover at least the cost of perished food, some cancellation costs that couldn't be covered by insurance. That just has to come forward to cover those businesses over the weekend. Longer term, we know the economy in large amount was going okay, but there are some specific sectors that will need help. Hospitality will probably need some help. We know the tourism sector will definitely need some help. The accommodation sector probably needs a bit of help as well. And certainly the event sector, which Melbourne is famous for, will need help.
Yeah.
Broadly, those are the four areas that need assistance. The rest of the economy was actually going okay. It'll be interesting to see the confidence come back from this, and there may be other sectors that now jump into that case as well.
Do you believe that there should be a lessened amount of travellers coming into hotel quarantine? Like the Premier mentioned last week that there needs to be a conversation about that.
I think it comes back down to if Victoria can't do hotel quarantine properly, why put Victoria and in fact the rest of the country at risk? So if there's other ways of managing hotel quarantine while Victoria gets it right, let's look at that. It'd be difficult for those Australians wanting to come back in to not be allowed to come back in, but maybe this is where we have to look to the other states to help, because ultimately, whilst this is a Victorian issue, the ramifications for the rest of the country are so great. We just have to get hotel quarantine right.
Does that require, and we heard from the Wesfarmers chief executive over the weekend that said that the federal government needs to take a more hands-on approach when it comes to hotel quarantine specifically in Victoria. Is that something that you would support what he's saying?
Yeah, no question. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not doing this so well. So clearly we need some help. We're hoping the last few days have seen a redesign and iron out whatever faults have been in there, so that when we restart, we don't have the same issues again. But if we need help from the federal government, then that should be asked for. And maybe it's time to rethink whether quarantine stays in the capital cities or whether it moves out to remote locations, for example.